dries, it can go quite a bit lighter, so don't jump in and start highlighting until you've assessed how it looks, and putting a glaze or wash over it if it's too light. So I think I may do that with mine.
It's yours.
Yeah.
I just didn't want you to knock it over. Somebody's like, I now realise it was yours.
Yeah. Come on.
I have my blue.
Oh, yeah.
So more often than not, you've got to re-establish some of the stronger lines, so you know where you're going before you do your highlighting. So I'll do that now with the blue. So in my case it's blue with a bit of black.
You please, I can re-establish my lines too.
And these lines don't necessarily go the whole way, so you can see here, we're starting there. This one here goes at the very edge, it's the hem one, so that'll go all the way up. Others are quite fat, so here I'm going to start fat and then come up a bit thinner. So you're doing a lot of modelling with the lines before you even start putting any highlighting in. As I said, watch how they end. You see how this particular line here goes up and comes along. So it goes up a bit like that, and then goes along. It's the end of a line or an organ of the body which gives the most expression, so how you complete a line is really, really important. You can now make a slightly more dilute version. So we'll, that doesn't need to go all the way down, but slightly more dilute. And sometimes you need to do a line twice, a wider, more dilute, followed by a slightly more opaque, thinner one. Using the same line or a slightly more dilute version, you can re-establish some shadows that have got a bit lost. So that's got a bit lost there, so block that in there. If something's been covered over or something else, like the book there, shoot off the edge. So that's not very good there. It's peated up before it stopped, been peated over before it's got to the book. So go over the line. It's easy to take the template off. Okay. So now we'll add a bit of white. There are various ways to do highlighting. Some of you have got a red garment, so I would have suggested there are two ways of highlighting. One is to avoid adding any white at all to red. Red and white makes pink, which is not generally, doesn't look very nice. So you can, if it's a red, you can add black or blue to the red for the protoplasmos or the membrane, and then you highlight just with leaving out the blue or the black and just having red. Or you could just have your original red, your English like red, whatever red it is, and do highlighting with white, just pure white, building up layers so it lets more or less of the red through, and then you wash over with the red. So the red has the last words, so that gets around that pinky thing. So here, I'll follow this one here. So as I've often said to you, with highlighting, force your eyes to look beyond the obvious high white, finer white, and extend out. So that's the highlight. But what I'm doing now goes right up to the edge there, and then I'll come back to that. So don't be fooled by the whitest parts. You want it opaque enough so you can see where you're going, but you want a bit of the background colour to show through. Now, depending on the style you're using, you can have really crisp edges so that you have a definite sort of abstract stacking system, or you can blend it a bit more, or do somewhere in between. So some parts may be blended, others more stacked. You can see that if this blue was too dilute, putting this on you wouldn't see it at all, because the blue wouldn't be dark enough. So it's the same with your face. If you have it too light, you just won't see your highlighting. There won't be enough contrast between dark and light. You need very little paint on your brush. It can be a good idea to put a glaze over this before you do this. This is, as you're right, being a stone, it doesn't stick quite so well initially, and I noticed I just poked a hole there. So a glaze of egg and water over that would be a good idea, I think. It sort of creates a separating layer. I'll do that now. Also, it means that if you do botch it up, you can take off your highlight without damaging, hopefully, the membrane. But be very careful if you do it that you don't over-egg it, because literally over-egg it, because you'll create that horrible shiny surface. A bit more water in there. Doesn't need much, just a little bit. I'll do that since I'm doing this. And when you do that, don't puddle it. Of course, the thicker the layer, the more egg will be remaining, because the water disappears. So if you really puddle it on, you'll certainly get an eggy, slimy surface. And, while that's drying, I will mix up something for this. I'll put one layer of this pure red over there, and then I'll do this with a bluey grey. I think I mentioned to you a few times already, it's quite nice to have one garment share in something of the other, so having this bluey grey highlight will share in that. Then later on I'll put washes of vermilion into the shadows, so it shares a bit in that.
Can I just, it was white and blue.
White and blue.
Yeah.
And a touch of black, because this has
Yeah.
black. Okay, so I want that a little bit deeper, so I'll put a wash of red over. Cheek again over the hand, but there we are. Isn't that a big effect? Always understand before you do an ear what you're doing and what's forward. So this is back, comes forward and goes back. So all your highlighting is going to be concentrated in the middle area. If you don't think like that, you'll end up just having spaces of equal depth. You won't have any sort of variation between dark and light. It's all to do with painting with understanding, isn't it? Look before you paint. So here, this is going back a lot, so just a little bit of highlight down the bottom here, but none round the top. With this particular icon, I'm making it all lower key than these, quite deliberately. I'm trying to sort of not have pastels, but I want the tin of this to be quite light. Okay, so now I'll add more white to that. The closer you get to the final whites, the more opaque it needs to be, really. You see I'm moving the board around and pointing this in the direction of the movement. The good thing about this white is that it's quite white when you put it on, so you can see where you're going, but then it becomes more translucent, transparent with time. So it sort of settles in rather than becomes garish. And I hide my mistake by whitening around that little hole I punched in. To stop poking holes, don't paint some of your painting like that, and of course what happens, you're jabbing in, aren't you? But if you keep it always at 45 degrees, you're massaging the surface, so you're less likely to punch a hole in, so keep it at 45 degrees. Also, you'll find more naturally your brush smooths the edges for you. If you immediately have a vertical brush, you'll start getting blunt ends. Don't overwork, you won't be able to make it as light as you want first time, so move somewhere else, let that settle, and return to it. And use the size brush appropriate. If it's a larger icon, you're going to need a larger brush. Some of these lines are not quite fat, so if it's a really big icon, you might be doing these lines in something that big, so you can, when you press down, you've got a nice fat line. So it saves time, but also more naturally helps you to get lines of the right thickness. So carry on like that, and then that I'll probably get a pure white. Now, I'll develop everything at the same time, but I'll just develop this area here so you can see one area complete. So in general, looking at that area there, which side is the white on? Where is the white or the light is distributed?
Towards the chest?
Just that area there, the shoulder. So obviously it's more that left side than the right. So always remind yourself before you start where the general thrust is, otherwise you'll end up with patches of white all over the place. So while doing this, always gradually moving that way. Here it's gradually moving up and to the left. Here it's light on the left side than the right, and so on. Always keep your eye on the general, don't lose the general for getting so interested in the particulars. You can get quite a nice jewel-like effect by having more opaque white, just the odd little bit here and there, little gems here and there. I think looking closely at the lovely works at the V&A gallery from Sinai, they had quite impasto whites, so I think that they added oil to their e-tempera. There's no way you can get that impasto with e-tempera. Or they might have added some whiting. They do that with fresco, the final whites, they're really quite thick. So they might have added, well, I know they did, Pancellinos did, he added ground up lime, which is calcium carbonate. I've never done it, but I'd be interested to sort of make an emulsion of egg and oil, sort of an oil paint, just for the final whites.
What about using oil paint?
Yeah, you could try, yeah, just for those final whites. But you have to be careful that you don't smudge it.
I got some Sennelier egg tempera paints, and I'm sure there was some kind of oil medium in them.
Right. Yeah.
And they were almost like oil colour, but
Yeah.
they wouldn't dry.
Yeah.
But it's powder. Mix your own. So it was in powder?
No, it was actually mixed,
Oh, okay.
and the binder on it was like oil paint.
Out of interest, I sent information the other day about a water, but this sounds a bit of a contradiction in terms, a water-based encaustic. It's a wax-based medium, but soluble in water. And it says that you can have it in pasto or more dilute. So I think I'll just make my own, but it is one of the old emulsion methods of using wax. There's the melting wax system, but there's also the emulsion system. It'd be quite interesting to try that. Okay, so that's a general idea. Okay, so just to recap, you've done your underpainting, you put your membrane over, re-establish lines, being really careful where you go. You don't sort of re-establish every single line everywhere. And then a lighter version, so about 30% lighter, say, than your membrane. And then no more than 3 degrees of lightness. It might even be 2. Some of you have been doing 1, like Martin. And probably all will just do one degree of lightness. So model their plasmos quite a lot. Okay.
Is that finished now?
Just that little area there. Well,
Yes.
no, I'm going to, one of the ones I've done the rest, I'll probably,
lights go on.
I don't know, I'll just see.
All right.
Because lights are always seen in contrast with something else, so
Yeah.
having done this, I may find that needs more or less.
All right.
Or I might decide that I want this more bright and that more low key, so I might
Yeah.
wash over that. So here, for example, that's quite low key compared to that. So having done this, I might decide we'll wash over it blue to knock it back a bit. So it just depends on the
Yeah.
effect, really. There's no one way. And then, as I said, I'll probably wash in bits of vermilion in the shadows. There's a lot of tweaking. But in terms of the highlighting, it's sort of three quarters of the way there.
If you wash a wash over and then you realise, no, I want to go up again and lighten it up, you can go lightening it up, and then you can wash it over again and lighten it up, wash it up. Okay.
That's really quite good to build on mistakes, inverted commas. If you make a mistake, you've got another layer, and that means you've got 15 layers instead of 3. If you've got it right up to 3 layers, hasn't got that interest in that layer.
So you mean it's good to make mistakes?
Yeah, make as many mistakes as you want.
Okay.